me ask you a dangerous question, one that will claw at your conscience long after this video ends. What would you do if standing for the truth meant losing everything? Your family, your safety, even your life. This isn't hypothetical. This is the story of a man who stared into the abyss and didn't blink. A man who challenged the unstoppable and won. Picture this. A world where kings are worshipped as gods, where fire obeys tyrants, where a single voice of truth is considered treason. Now imagine that voice is yours. The execution pyre is lit. The crowd screams for your blood. And in this moment, this heartbeat between life and death, you must choose, bow or burn. This is the untold story of Prophet Ibrahim, but make no mistake, it's your story too. Because right now in your world there are modern Nimrods, not with golden crowns, but with slick slogans and systemic control. They don't wield swords, they wield algorithms, social pressure, the silent threat of exclusion, and they're testing you, just as they tested Ibrahim. Will you conform? Will you kneel? What comes next will rewire your understanding of power. You'll witness how a single man armed with nothing but unbreakable conviction shattered an empire's illusions, how he turned fire into salvation, how he walked away from everything so his descendants could have anything. And here's the secret they don't want you to realize. His blood runs in your veins. That same courage, that same defiance, that same refusal to worship false idols, whether they're carved from stone or societal approval. But pay close attention, because woven into every moment of this saga are three psychological keys that can unlock your hidden resolve when the world demands your surrender. Miss one detail and you miss the weapon. The countdown starts now. The fire is lit. And by the end of this video, you'll face an unavoidable choice. Live as a slave to fear, or rise as an heir to Ibrahim. The screen won't protect you, the truth never does. Long ago, in an age of darkness and tyranny, when men worshipped the stars and bowed before stone, a child was born. A child who would defy kings, challenge empires, and change the course of history forever. His name was Ibrahim, known to the world as Abraham, the friend of Allah. But before he became a prophet, before he stood alone against the might of Nimrod, before he faced the fire, he was just a boy, hidden away in a cave, a secret even from his own father. The world in those days was not like ours. It was a time of ignorance, of fear, of oppression. The strong ruled the weak, and the weak had no choice but to obey. At the center of this darkness stood a king whose name struck terror into the hearts of men, Nimrod. He was no ordinary tyrant. He did not conquer with swords alone, but with cunning, with deception, with control over the very means of life itself. Nimrod's kingdom stretched across the earth, his power absolute. He commanded that all wealth, all food, all provisions be brought to him and him alone. No man could eat unless Nimrod allowed it. No village could thrive unless Nimrod permitted it. And in exchange for bread, for survival, the people had to bow. They had to worship him. If you want to live, he declared, you must serve me. And so the world bowed. But in the shadows of this oppression, in a land where whispers were dangerous and defiance meant death, a woman carried a child she knew she could not keep. For Nimrod had decreed that all newborn boys must die. His seers had warned him, a child will rise to destroy your kingdom. And so the order was given. No son would live to challenge him. Terrified, the woman fled. She could not bear to lose her child, yet she could not hide him forever. And so she did the only thing she could. She took him to a cave, a lonely place where none would think to look. She laid him down, her heart breaking, and walked away, praying to the unseen God she barely knew. Protect him, she whispered. If you are there, save my son. Days passed, then weeks. She returned in secret, expecting to find only bones. But instead, she found a miracle. The child was alive, not just alive, thriving. His tiny fingers provided milk, as if the very earth sustained him. His body grew at a rate no human child should. In a month, he aged a year. In 2 months, he was a toddler. In 6, a boy. This was no ordinary child. This was Ibrahim. When the time came, his mother brought him home. His father, Azar, was stunned. He had believed his son dead, lost to Nimrod's cruelty. Yet here he stood, healthy, strong, his eyes filled with a wisdom far beyond his years. Azar, a man who carved idols for a living, who bowed before the stars and the stones, rejoiced. "A son," he cried, "a gift from the gods." But Ibrahim was no gift for false gods. From the moment he could speak, he questioned. From the moment he could walk, he challenged. He would sit beside his father in the marketplace, watching as men and women came to buy the statues Azar had carved, statues they called gods. "Why do you worship what cannot hear you?" young Ibrahim would ask. The buyers would pause, uneasy. "Because our fathers did," they would say. And if your fathers were wrong, he would reply, the people would frown, then walk away, their faith unsettled. Azar's business suffered. The priests of the idols grew angry. "That boy," they muttered. "He poisons minds." But Ibrahim did not stop. One day, when the city was empty, when the people had gone to a festival outside the walls, Ibrahim entered the great temple, the heart of their false worship. Inside, the idols stood in rows, offerings of food and gold at their feet. Ibrahim looked at them, his heart burning with truth. "You do not eat," he said to the silent statues. "You do not speak. You do not move. How then can you be gods?" And then he took an axe. One by one, he shattered them. The small ones, the medium ones, the ones the people called lords of the sky and keepers of fate. He reduced them to rubble, leaving only the largest idol standing. Then, with a final act of defiance, he hung the axe around its neck. When the people returned, they found their temple in ruins, their gods broken. Only the great idol remained, the axe resting against it as if to say, "Here is your God. Let him explain." The city erupted in fury. "Who did this?" they screamed. The answer came quickly. "Ibrahim, it must be him." They dragged him before the crowd, before the priests, before the elders. "Did you destroy our gods?" they demanded. Ibrahim, calm as the still night, replied, "No, it was the big one. Ask him if he can speak." Silence. The crowd stared at the great idol. It did not move. It did not answer. Ibrahim pressed on. "You worship what cannot hear you, what cannot help you. You bow to stone while the true God, the one who created the heavens and the earth, waits for you to turn to him." The priests trembled with rage. The people muttered, some in anger, some in doubt. But the rulers, the enforcers of Nimrod's will, would not let this stand. "Enough," they cried. "Burn him, burn the blasphemer alive." And so they gathered wood, more than had ever been gathered before. They built a pyre so vast, its flames could be seen for miles. They stoked the fire until the heat drove men back, until the very air shimmered with death. Ibrahim, bound in chains, was brought before the inferno. The crowd jeered, their faces twisted in hatred. This is what happens to those who defy the gods. But Ibrahim did not beg, he did not weep. He looked at the fire, then at the sky, and smiled. "I go to my Lord," he said. "He will guide me." And with that, they threw him in. The flames roared. The crowd cheered. But the fire did not burn him. And that is where our story truly begins. The flames roared skyward, a swirling inferno so intense it scorched the faces of those who stood too close. The crowd leaned in, their eyes wide with anticipation, waiting for the defiant boy to scream, to beg, to burn. But as the smoke cleared, their triumphant jeers died in their throats. Ibrahim stood unharmed. Not just unharmed, untouched. The fire raged around him, yet it did not singe his clothes, did not blacken his skin. The ropes that bound him fell away, reduced to ashes, while he remained whole. A hush fell over the people. Some staggered back in terror, others fell to their knees, their minds reeling. "Sorcery!" the priests shrieked. "A trick!" the nobles insisted. But deep down in the secret chambers of their hearts, they knew this was no trick. This was power beyond their understanding. Nimrod, watching from his throne, felt the first cold trickle of fear. His seers had warned him. A child would rise to destroy his kingdom, and now that child stood in the heart of a furnace, smiling. The king's fingers tightened around the arms of his chair. This could not stand. He summoned his wisest advisors. How does he survive? The gods protect him, one whispered. No, Nimrod snarled. There are no gods but those I permit. Meanwhile, Ibrahim stepped from the pyre, the crowd parting before him like reeds before a river. His eyes met those of the people, some filled with awe, others with hatred. He spoke then, his voice carrying over the stunned silence. You see now the truth. Your gods are stone, they do not answer, they do not save. But the one who created the heavens and the earth, he saves, he answers. Will you still deny him? The people murmured. Some turned away, ashamed, others clenched, their fists unwilling to surrender their pride. Nimrod acted swiftly. If he could not kill Ibrahim, he would break him another way. That night, the king's soldiers came for Ibrahim's family. Azar, the idol carver, was dragged before the throne. Your son humiliates me, Nimrod hissed. Renounce him, deny his words, or you will share his fate. Azar trembled. He had spent his life carving gods from wood and stone. He had never known true faith, only tradition, only fear. And now, faced with death, that fear consumed him. I renounce him, he whispered. The words crushed Ibrahim more than the fire ever could, but his trial was not over. Nimrod, unsatisfied, devised a final test, one he was certain would break the prophet once and for all. You claim your God is the greatest, the king sneered. Then let us see whose power is greater. I will build a tower so high it scrapes the heavens. I will challenge your God himself. And so the construction began. Thousands toiled, stacking brick upon brick, reaching for the sky. Nimrod watched from below, his grin widening with every level. Let your God strike me down if he can. Ibrahim merely shook his head. You do not challenge him, you challenge only your own arrogance. Then, as if in answer, the sky darkened. A sound like thunder rolled across the land, but it was not thunder. It was wings. A swarm of tiny birds, countless in number, descended upon the tower. They carried pebbles in their beaks, and where these stones struck, the bricks crumbled. The tower swayed. The workers screamed. Nimrod looked up, just as the first cracks appeared. No, the tower collapsed, burying the king's pride in dust and ruin. The people wailed. The priests tore their robes. And Ibrahim, standing amid the wreckage, spoke the words that would echo through history. That which you worship besides him are but names you have invented, you and your fathers, for which Allah has sent down no authority. The command belongs only to Allah. He has commanded that you worship none but him. That is the straight path. But Nimrod, though humbled, was not yet defeated, and Ibrahim's greatest test still lay ahead, for the king had one last weapon to wield, one last way to break the prophet's resolve, and it would come from the unlikeliest of places, his own family. The kingdom trembled in the wake of Nimrod's humiliation. The mighty tower lay in ruins, its shattered bricks scattered across the land like broken bones. The people who once cowered before their king now whispered in the markets and alleyways, their voices laced with doubt. If Nimrod's power is so great, they murmured, why could he not protect his tower? Why could he not break one man? Nimrod, pacing the black marble floors of his palace, felt the foundations of his rule cracking beneath him. He had thrown Ibrahim into fire, only for the flames to refuse their burn. He had challenged Allah himself, only to watch his pride crumble under a storm of pebbles. Now, as the first seeds of rebellion took root in his kingdom, the tyrant realized with dawning horror that his greatest enemy was not an army, not a rival king, but an idea. And ideas, once planted, are difficult to kill. So Nimrod chose a different weapon, one far more insidious than fire or stone. He would strike at Ibrahim's heart. The royal guards came at midnight, their torches painting the narrow streets in flickering red. They kicked down the door of the small house where Ibrahim and his wife Sarah had taken refuge. Sarah, heavy with child, barely had time to rise from her bed before rough hands seized her. By order of the king, the captain sneered, you are summoned to the palace. Ibrahim lunged forward, but a dozen spears barred his path. Sarah met his eyes, a silent promise passing between them before the guards dragged her into the night. Fantijas' palace loomed ahead, its obsidian walls swallowing the moonlight. Nimrod waited on his throne, a golden goblet of wine dangling from his fingers. As Sarah was forced to her knees, the king studied her with the cold curiosity of a man examining an insect. "Your husband," he began, "has become inconvenient." Sarah said nothing. Nimrod leaned forward. "I could have you flayed alive for that silence." "Then do it," Sarah replied. The courtiers gasped. No one spoke to the king this way. No one lived to repeat such words, but Nimrod only smiled. "Ho, I have something far more interesting in mind." He snapped his fingers. The guards hauled Sarah not to the dungeons but to the royal chambers, a gilded cage of silk pillows and silver trays heaped with delicacies. "Every luxury will be yours," Nimrod purred. "Every comfort. You will want for nothing except your husband. Renounce him, swear that his god is false, and this life is yours to keep." Sarah picked up a ripe pomegranate from the nearest tray, studied its ruby flesh, then let it drop to the floor where it burst like a bleeding heart. "My answer is no." Nimrod's smile never wavered. "We shall see." For 40 days and 40 nights, Sarah endured. The king's hospitality became a torture of its own. Rich foods she refused to eat, soft beds she refused to sleep in, servants ordered to whisper daily that Ibrahim had abandoned her, that he had fled the kingdom to save himself. Through it, all Sarah prayed, and on the 41st morning, as dawn painted the eastern sky, the stone walls of her prison breathed. A crack appeared, then another. The very air shimmered like heat on desert sands. And suddenly, impossibly, Sarah stood. Outside the palace walls, the grass cool beneath her bare feet. Before her stood not a guard, not a king, but a being of light whose wings stretched wider than the horizon. "Sarah," the angel spoke, "your faith has been heard. Come." She followed, her swollen belly heavy with the child she had feared would be born in captivity. The angel led her to a cave where, impossible, Ibrahim waited, his face gaunt from weeks of searching. Their reunion was a wordless embrace, a mingling of tears, a silent oath that no power on earth would ever part them again. But their trials were far from over. That night, as Sarah slept, Ibrahim knelt beneath the stars, his prayers pouring forth like blood from an open wound. "My Lord, protect my family. Give us a home where we may worship you in peace." The answer came not in words but in vision, a land of rolling hills and olive groves, a place where his descendants would outnumber the stars, and one more thing, a command that turned Ibrahim's blood to ice. "Take your son, your only son, and offer him to me." Ibrahim staggered to his feet. Ismail, their miracle child, born after years of barrenness, the boy whose laughter filled their days with light, sacrificed. For 3 days, Ibrahim wandered the wilderness, wrestling with the divine command. Was this truly Allah's voice, or some trick of his exhausted mind? On the 3rd night, as he watched Ismail chase fireflies through the tall grass, the truth settled upon him. This was no test of cruelty, but of surrender. The next morning, his hands shook as he packed the knife, the rope, the wood for the fire. "Father?" Ismail tugged at his sleeve. "Where are we going?" Ibrahim could barely speak around the stone in his throat. "To worship Allah, my son." The climb up Mount Moriah took hours, each step heavier than the last. Ismail, ever curious, carried the wood without complaint. "Father," he asked as they reached the summit, "we have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for sacrifice?" Ibrahim's tears fell freely now. "Allah will provide, my son." As he bound Ismail's wrists, the boy's eyes widened, not with fear, but with understanding. "Is this Allah's command?" Ibrahim could only nod. Ismail smiled. "Then I am content, father." The knife flashed in the sunlight as Ibrahim raised it, and the angel's voice split the sky. "Ibrahim, stay your hand." A rustling in the thicket. A ram, its horns tangled in brambles, struggled nearby. The sacrifice had been provided. The test was complete. As Ibrahim untied his son, the divine voice spoke once more. "By myself I swear, because you have done this and not withheld your son, I will bless you beyond measure. Your descendants shall be as countless as the stars. Through them all nations of the earth will find blessing." But as father and son descended the mountain, a new terror awaited, one neither could have foreseen. For Sarah, pacing at the foot of the trail, held a message that would shatter their hard-won peace. Nimrod knows you live, and he is coming. The final battle between faith and tyranny was about to begin. The knife had fallen from Ibrahim's hand. The ram lay sacrificed in place of his son. The divine voice still echoed in his ears, "I will bless you beyond measure." But now, as he stood at the base of Mount Moriah, the scent of smoke still clinging to his robes, Sarah's words struck like a thunderbolt. "Nimrod knows you live." Ibrahim's hands, still trembling from the trial on the mountain, now clenched into fists. He had faced fire. He had raised a blade to his own son. He had lost everything: his home, his people, his father's love, all for the sake of truth. And still the tyrant would not relent. Sarah pressed the warning into his palm, a scrap of parchment smuggled from the city by a sympathetic merchant. The ink was smudged, the handwriting rushed, but the message was clear. "The king has ordered every road watched, every village searched. He offers a mountain of gold for your head. They say he has consulted dark arts to ensure your destruction." Ismail, though just a boy, straightened his shoulders. "Then we fight." Ibrahim placed a hand on his son's head. "No, my son. We walk another path." That night, under cover of darkness, the small family gathered what little they could. Carry a water skin, a pouch of dates, Ibrahim's worn staff. They turned their backs on the only land Ismail had ever known and set out into the trackless desert. The sands stretched endlessly before them, a sea of gold beneath the cold stars. With each step, Ibrahim replayed the divine promise in his mind. "Your descendants shall be as countless as the stars." But how? They were three souls against the wilderness, fugitives with no home, no allies, no future, but the next dune. Weeks passed. The desert tested them in ways Nimrod never could. Scorching days gave way to freezing nights. Their sandals wore to shreds. The dates ran out, then the water. Sarah's lips cracked with thirst. Ismail's small feet left bloody prints in the sand. The brink of collapse, they stumbled upon a sight that defied reason. A spring of fresh water bubbling up from barren rock. As they drank, Ibrahim noticed the tracks of camels in the dirt. Then voices. A caravan emerged from the heat haze. Not Nimrod's soldiers, but traders from the south, their camels laden with spices and silver. At their head rode an old man with eyes like flint. "You're either very brave or very foolish to cross this waste on foot," the leader said, dismounting. Ibrahim met his gaze. "We seek only a place to worship in peace." Something in those words stirred the old trader. He studied Ibrahim's face, then Sarah's, then Ismail's. After a long silence, he grunted, "My name is Jethro. My people have a saying. The guest is God's responsibility." He tossed Ibrahim a water skin. "You'll ride with us." The caravan brought them to a land of rolling hills and olive groves, Canaan, a place far from Nimrod's reach. Jethro, true to his word, gifted them a plot of earth near the great oak of Mamre. For the first time in years, Ibrahim dared to hope. He built an altar beneath the oak, offering thanks for their deliverance. Sarah, her strength returning, wove tents from goat hair. Ismail chased lizards through the grass, his laughter ringing like bells. But peace for Ibrahim was never meant to last. One evening, as the sun blared into the horizon, three strangers appeared at the edge of their camp. Their robes were travel-stained, their faces obscured by dust. Yet something in their bearing made Ibrahim rise quickly, bowing low. "Welcome, honored guests," he said, already calling for Sarah to prepare bread. The tallest stranger removed his hood. "Where is your wife, Ibrahim?" A chill ran down Ibrahim's spine. These men knew his name, yet he had never seen them before. Sarah, listening from the tent, froze when she heard the next words. "By this time next year, you will hold a son in your arms," she laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "My lord, I am an old woman. My husband is an old man. Do you mock us?" The stranger's eyes gleamed. "Is anything too wonderful for the Lord?" That night, as the visitors slept beneath the stars, Ibrahim kept watch. He saw their forms begin to glow, their faces shifting like light on water. Then, impossible, their bodies stretched upward, their shoulders sprouting wings that blotted out the moon. Angels. Before Ibrahim could cry out, the tallest spoke, "We go now to Sodom, for its wickedness has reached heaven's gates. By dawn it will be dust." Ibrahim fell to his knees. "What of the righteous there? Will you sweep away the innocent with the guilty?" The angel's voice softened. "If 10 just souls can be found, the city will stand." As the celestial beings vanished into the night, Ibrahim turned toward the distant glow of Sodom's lights. And the nephew he had not seen in decades, a man named Lut, who had made his home in that doomed place. Dawn came. A pillar of fire split the sky in the east. The ground trembled. Sarah clutched Ismail to her chest as an unnatural wind howled across the plains. Ibrahim stood at the edge of the ridge, watching the horizon burn. No messenger came. No survivors. Sodom had fallen, and with it, the last tether to his past. That afternoon, as the family gathered in stunned silence, hoofbeats echoed through the valley. A lone rider approached, a figure so covered in ash and soot he seemed a ghost. He dismounted, collapsing at Ibrahim's feet. It was Lut, alive, barely. His clothes reeked of sulfur. His hands shook as he clutched Ibrahim's robe. "Uncle, they're coming." "Who?" Lut's eyes rolled back. As he lost consciousness, his final words hung in the air like smoke. "Nimrod's army found your trail." The war was not over. It had only just begun. The desert wind howled like a wounded beast as Ibrahim carried his unconscious nephew into the tent. Sarah gasped when she saw Lut's condition. His skin blistered from unnatural heat, his lips cracked. With thirst, his once fine robes now tattered rags reeking of sulfur and despair. "By all that's holy," she whispered, soaking a cloth in precious water to dab at his burns. "What happened to him?" Ibrahim's hands trembled as he peeled back Lut's scorched sleeve, revealing an angry brand burned into the flesh, Nimrod's royal seal. The king's men found him. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, thick, greasy drops that sizzled when they struck the stones. Ismail, peering through the tent flap, recoiled. "Father, the water burns!" A memory flashed through Ibrahim's mind. The angel's warning about Sodom's destruction, the firestorm that had consumed the wicked city. Now, as the toxic rain fell across Canaan, he understood with chilling clarity. Nimrod had harnessed the remnants of that divine wrath. The king was weaponizing the very judgment of heaven. Lut stirred at midnight, his breath ragged. "They're digging," he croaked. Ibrahim leaned closer. "Who?" "The king's sorcerers." Lut's fingers dug into Ibrahim's arm. Beneath Sodom's ruins, they found something in the salt, a power not meant for mortal hands. His eyes rolled back, showing their whites. "They call it the breath of God." Sarah crossed herself. Ismail, wide-eyed, clutched his father's robe. A distant rumble shook the earth. Not thunder, but something far more ominous. The synchronized march of an army. Ibrahim grabbed his staff and threw open the tent flap. The valley below was alive, with torchlight. Thousands of soldiers, their armor glinting in the unnatural rain, formed ranks along the riverbank. At their center loomed a monstrous siege engine, a brass bull with smoke curling from its nostrils. And atop it, resplendent in cursed gold, sat Nimrod himself, his face twisted in triumph. "Ibrahim!" The king's voice boomed across the distance, amplified by some dark art. "Come forth and meet your God!" The family scrambled to pack what little they could carry. "Take Ismail to the caves," Ibrahim ordered Sarah, pressing a dagger into her hand. She stared at him. "And you?" His staff glowed faintly in his grip, a radiance that had not been there before the angel's visit. This ends tonight. As Sarah and Ismail fled northward, Ibrahim turned to face the advancing army alone. The rain burned where it touched his skin, but he did not flinch. Step by step, he descended the hill toward the sea of spears and shields. Nimrod's laughter echoed across the field. "Behold the mighty prophet. Where is your Allah now?" Ibrahim planted his staff in the poisoned earth. "He is here," the king sneered. "Then let him save you." A flick of his wrist, and the brass bull's belly split open, revealing a churning inferno within. This fire was kindled with Sodom's ashes. Not even your god can extinguish. A sound like tearing silk split the air. The soldiers gasped as the clouds above swirled into a massive vortex. The toxic rain ceased mid-fall, droplets hanging suspended like glittering beads. Then, lightning. Not the familiar jagged bolts, but a single, perfect column of white fire that struck the brass bull with surgical precision. The war machine exploded in a shower of molten metal, hurling Nimrod from his perch. The king staggered to his feet, his fine robe smoking. "Kill him!" he shrieked. Not a single soldier moved. Ibrahim raised his hands and the suspended raindrops began to vibrate, singing an eerie chorus. "You challenged heaven itself, Nimrod. Now face its answer." The king's eyes darted left and right as his army slowly backed away. "You fools, I am your god!" A child's voice rang out from the ridge. "Liar!" Ismail stood there, small but defiant, a sling clutched in his hand. Before anyone could react, he let fly a single smooth stone. It struck Nimrod between the eyes with a crack like splitting bone. The tyrant swayed. His knees buckled. As he collapsed, the suspended raindrops fell at last. Not as poison, but as cleansing water that washed the brand from Lut's arm and the ash from the sky. Dawn broke over a transformed land. Nimrod's army had fled in the night, abandoning their cursed weapons. The once barren fields now sprouted green shoots. And at the center of it all, Ibrahim stood with his family, watching the sunrise paint the hills in gold. The divine voice spoke once more, softer than before. "Look toward the heavens, Ibrahim. Count the stars if you can. So shall your descendants be." Sarah, her hand resting on her belly where new life stirred, smiled through tears. Ismail whooped with joy, chasing after a flock of doves that rose like living prayers into the morning sky. But Lut stood apart, staring south toward the ruins of Sodom. "It's not over," he murmured. "The breath of God still lies buried. Others will seek it." Ibrahim placed a hand on his nephew's shoulder. "Then we must ensure they never find it." As the family turned toward their new future, the camera would linger. On one final image, Ibrahim's staff, now planted firmly in the rich soil, putting down roots that would one day grow into an oak tree, a tree under whose branches kings and prophets would rest for generations to come. The story of Ibrahim was ending, but his legacy had only just begun. This is not just a story. This is a revelation, an awakening. The tale of Ibrahim is the ultimate proof that one man's unshakable faith can topple empires, defy fire, and rewrite destiny itself. But here's the chilling truth. Nimrod's spirit lives on, in every tyrant who demands blind obedience, in every force that tries to extinguish truth, in every moment you're pressured to abandon your convictions. The battle Ibrahim fought? It's still raging inside you. Think about it. How many times have you faced your own Nimrod? A voice mocking your beliefs, a system demanding conformity, a fear whispering, bow or burn. Yet here's the divine. Secret Ibrahim proved, the flames only purify, they never consume the faithful. That's why this story isn't ancient history, it's your survival blueprint. But let's be brutally honest, most people will watch this and move on, unchanged. They'll forget Ibrahim's defiance by tomorrow, return to their compromises, and keep serving their modern-day Nimrods. Will you be one of them? Or will you hit like right now, searing this truth into your mind and signaling to the algorithm, I choose courage? Every like is a declaration. I refuse to worship false gods. And if this story gripped you, if your pulse raced when the fire refused to burn, or your breath caught as the knife hovered over Ismail, then you must subscribe. Because this channel isn't just about tales, it's about weapons. Weapons of faith, of strategy, of unbreakable will. We dissect the minds of giants like Ibrahim so you can replicate their power. Miss one video and you might miss the key to your own breakthrough. Final question, the one that will haunt you. What's your Mount Moriah? What sacrifice is destiny demanding of you? Comment below with one word, the idol you know you need to shatter. Let's create a legion of Ibrahims in this comment section. The staff has been passed, the choice is yours. Will you carry the flame or be consumed by it?